is iRacing.
Last time we took a long trip across an entire continent, but this time we'll even go so far as to skip across hemispheres. Time for a race down under as we get ready to watch round 6 of the Porsche Owners Club series. And you'll see it all live here on the Global SimRacing Channel. I'm Joe Peak, and with me in the booth is Alex Goldschmidt. Behind the scenes is our director, Christian Duploy, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Bathurst has built a reputation as a fearsome track, and to understand why, let's head to our track guide. Welcome to Mount Panorama Circuit. Most drivers simply refer to this place as Bathurst, with it being located just to the southwest of the city's major hub. But most ominously, and perhaps appropriately, it's been nicknamed the Mountain. With more than 500 feet of elevation change over the course of a lap, it's easy to understand why. Though originally built for racing, it's become a street circuit over time, with the track itself used for regular traffic and featuring residential housing all along the roads. This makes this 4-mile, 23-turn course incredibly unique in the world of racing. In the past, the track has hosted a variety of types of cars, including open-wheelers. But modern safety standards means that most competitive racing has now been limited to sports cars and touring cars. However, the dangers are very real due to the incredibly high speeds and lack of runoff throughout much of the circuit. The quickest parts are the run up the mountain straight towards Griffin's Bend, and then the flat-out blast back down the Conrad Straight and into the chase. This chicane was added in the late 80s to break up the run down to Murray's Corner. But while most chicanes are derided for ruining the character of a track, the terrifying speed as you approach it and the general difficulty make it fit right in with Bathurst challenges. However, the toughest portions are undoubtedly along the mountain itself, with notorious corners like the Cutting, Brock's Skyline, the Dipper, and Forest's Elbow. In fact, one of the more unique worries of this course is that all of these parts are so narrow that track blockages due to wrecks are not uncommon in the first few laps. The Australian fans often line the fences and hillsides to witness the daredevil spectacle of drivers trying to claim King of the Mountain. You can't blame them with how rare of a sight a track like Bathurst is today. You know, Alex, I'd honestly almost describe this place as feeling cartoonish with how outrageous it is.
Yeah, definitely, Joe. I mean, it's a combination of straight line speed, but also a lot of technicality, especially going up towards turn 4 at the cutting. I mean, half of this circuit, which has been open since March of 1938, is pretty much in a straight line. You've got to use traction and also those wonderful flat 6 boxer engines to, you know, their maximum potential. Looking back over the history of this circuit as well, Porsche has had victories in the famed Bathurst 12 Hours, and one driver that's done it twice is Matt Campbell back in 2019 and 2024. But the biggest thing that we're going to have to watch out for between the GT3s and the GT4s are the closing rates of speed, and that's going to be quite crucial coming out of Forest Elbow at turn 18 all the way down to the famed Chase complex at turns 20 to 22, where you can really get it all wrong at high speed.
It's going to be difficult, and you have to be brave on the brakes into there, without a doubt. Before we get to the action on track, we do want to give a quick mention to our sponsors, which includes Porsche. There is no substitute. Find out more at Porsche.com. And Top Gun MG, helping financial advisors be the best of the best. Contact them today at TopGunMG.com. That's TopGunMG.com. So if we have a chance to take a look at the points, things have closed up a little bit since last week. Dylan Scott taking another victory and continuing to cut down on Michael Bolton, who's been very consistent, but he hasn't had the pace in the last two races to beat Dylan, as Federico Del Toro is a little ways behind at this stage. It's more of a closer fight between himself and Dustin Heindel, although Federico did outrun him last time out by one position. From there, it gets much closer towards the latter end of the top 10 with a very tight fight between Isabel, Steele, Rondeau, and Russell. Even Mark and Rob tied for that 9th position. That is, of course, the GT3 standings. We also have the GT4 fields. Why don't you walk us through that, Alex?
Well, Christopher Marciniak is leading the way and has a big advantage. 33 points ahead of John Mamai, with Jim Garamani rounding out the top 3, a further 10 points adrift. Larry Haas, and then we've also got Matthew Hollander rounding out the top 5, 62 points spreading the top 5, and it's going to get a little bit closer towards the tail end of the 8 strong that have already scored points. Alan Watts, Adam Abrams, and Doug Boccagioni rounding out the top 8, but Marciniak has got a comfortable lead. Not here tonight, so that could lead maybe a couple of drivers to move up the table.
They definitely need it, because he's been kind of whomping on everybody. Has only not won a single race so far. Every other one he's been on the top step. But that is, of course, the GT4 standings. Let's take a look at the race details for today's event, as the drivers are in the midst of qualifying right now. And it is, as I mentioned, into round 6 of the season. But one of the big features here is that they have upped the race length a couple of seasons ago. It had been at 30 minutes for quite some time. It is now 40 minutes, which means there is a scheduled pit stop, and that is thanks to the 50% fuel tank capacity. So not the full fuel tank that you see normally on these type of cars, but they will not be required to change tires in that. They do have 2 spare cars. At a place like this, that is going to be a great mercy, because it's going to be easy to throw it away. Just ask anybody who has attempted a lap around here, and I'm sure they'll tell you that even the smallest mistake can have the most dire of consequences, Alex. So I have no doubt that at least 1 or 2 drivers are going to wind up needing one of those spares.
Well, especially, we talked about the cutting earlier on at turn 4, and the barriers are so close. There is no room for mistakes. And when you go through the cutting, Quarry, through Reed, Solomon Park, and then into the fast right-hander at McPhillamy, where we have seen in seasons past that has caught a few drivers out. Of course, this particular circuit is home to the Bathurst 12 Hours, held every January from dark to dusk, effectively, over the course of a once around the clock adventure, but also is hosts the Bathurst 1000, which is part of the Australian Supercars Championship, and it is a fearsome test. When you get through from McPhillamy, you've got to go through the Skyline, the S's, and the Dipper, and it is going to be a true test over the 40 minutes. You cannot leave any stone unturned. You cannot make a mistake at the wrong moment.
Looks like they have completed the qualifying, so we've got a chance to go through our starting order on this one here in just a bit. And I'm sure track position going to be a big factor on this one. Even though it is definitely possible to pass, you do not want to be starting towards the back. And Dylan Scott is on the pole. Jad Duncan will be starting next to him. We've got BJ Fulton in 3rd, with Dustin Heindel in the 4th position. Jeffrey Shulam in P5, Mark Rondeau starting to his outside of row 3. Then it's Rob Russell in 7th. Michael Terzi will be starting next to him in 8th position. Row 5 sees Evan Gold and David Fabi rounding out your 10-car GT3 fields. What about our GT4 field here, Alex?
Well, it's Alan Watts that's going to start from the pole position in the 225. He'll have Adam Abrams alongside, with Jim Garamani and Larry Haza rounding out the 4-strong grid. So a total of 14 Porsches on the grid here at Mount Panorama. The mountain, as it's more commonly known in Australia, in New South Wales, but should be an interesting one over the next 40 minutes. As you said, Joe, that fuel tank capacity is going to force the people into a mandatory pit stop. But that's also going to be another thing because it's a long pit lane with 2 corners and also a tricky chicane to negotiate on the inroad into pit road itself.
I have seen it catch out a number of drivers. It is overcast, so hopefully that should mean cooler conditions, which should leave the track plenty grippy for our drivers. And they're going to need every little bit of that grip possible as the safety car is now in and Dylan Scott has control of the field. I believe, even though he resides in the States, he is from Australia originally. So it's going to be a bit of a home race for him. And coming towards the line, he's waiting for that call from the flag stand. And there it is. Green flag is out. He is on his way. Chad Duncan, though, gets a little bit of a better jump around the outside. The 83 does not break deep enough to try and take that lead away. But our GT3 cars are clean through the first corner. It looks like the GT4s as well.
Yeah, Alan Watts has got the perfect hole shot ahead of Adam Abrams, and he's got a 5.5 tenth of a second advantage. Looking back at the GT3 start, there was a little bit of concertinaing between the likes of Jeffrey Schull and Rob Russell and Mark Rondeau as they go into Griffin's Bend here at turn 2. And you can see already Dylan Scott starting to try and stretch that advantage through the cutting for the first time. As I said, this is where you've really got to be very, very careful. You can pinball your way across the circuit if you smack one of the walls, either right or left, and now up the hill through Reed Park. And then it's going to be the flat-out complex through Reed, through Sulman, where you're going to have a compression zone, and you've got to have perfect balance all the way through as they fly their way through the wall.
And Schulam did bounce off the wall. It's showing him missing his rear wing. I'm very curious if he's going to be able to manage this lap, or if maybe it's just not updated on our end. Is it back? No, it looks like it is still missing. So that car cannot be handling well, but he's not exactly dropping off of Heindel so far. So I guess it's working well enough.
Well, I mean, as soon as they come out of Forest Elbow, which they're going to do now, Jeffrey Schulam's going to have the aerodynamic advantage because there is nothing holding that rear end down apart from the rear diffuser. So Jeffrey Schulam, let's ride on board with him down the iconic Conrod Straight at over 155 miles an hour over the crest. And now it's the long run down to the chase, topping over 165 miles an hour down the right-hand kink into the hard braking zone. And still, Jeffrey Schulam has kept that car on track. Oh, but Adam Abrams has smacked the wall, and that right front has got no proper steering going. Michael Tercy also hits trouble.
Yeah, looks like they did not get through clean, and I am seeing David Fabi also showing as in pit lane. Jeffrey Schulam has another problem, this time coming out of Murray's corner and then makes it worse, backing himself into the wall. The car carries on, but he's going to have to go a full lap before he can make it to pit lane.
Yeah, and well, we've had our first couple of early casualties. David Farby, Adam Abrams with broken right front steering, but Dylan Scott now extends the lead over Chad Duncan to nearly the best part of a second. Dylan really using his, as you rightly said, originally being from Australia, it is very much like a home race, and he's using that to good advantage. You can see how close he is getting to the walls, coming through out of Reed Park into Sulman, down the compression zone, and he's absolutely on the limit. And now going through into McPhillamy, he's going to be pushing more than 135 miles an hour down the hill, over under the Coates Hire signage into Skyline, down into the S's. This is where you're going to be at second, maybe third gear. Keep the traction, modulate the throttle and the braking, and then it's the nice little complex down the hill into Forest Elbow. And then you can open the taps on the 4-litre flat 6 boxer engine, producing around about 500 plus horsepower. And Dylan Scott is extending that lead over Chad Duncan. BJ Fulton now rounds out the top 3, and it's an equidistant gap between the top 3 anyway. It's about a second apiece between Scott and Duncan and Fulton at the moment here, Joe.
Well, that'll be nice for them to be able to really focus on their own race. Like we said, you're almost really racing the track more than you're racing your competitors around this place. And even though they'd like to be close enough trying to make a pass, I think just being able to settle in will be handy. We've still got 35 minutes left to go in this thing. Alan Watts still leading down to the GT4s, as you can see as well, and it's a much bigger gap, 5.8 seconds that he's got over Garamani. Let me double check to see who was our other winner. Looks like Matt Hollander in round 3. So Alan Watts, if he can come home with this one, it'll be his first victory of 2025.
Yeah, great on board here from a driver's eye perspective, on board with the 82 of BJ Fulton, still rocking the good old Martini stripes. I've got a good friend over in the Porsche Sports Cup Suisse, which holds its season finale at Misano. My friend from Scotland, Rod Christie, runs a very similar livery, but he's gone body in white with the Martini stripes, and that car looks glorious. Very reminiscent of the car that ran with Rebellion at the 24 Hours of Spa-Francorchamps back in 2021, and one of the drivers there, two-time Bathurst 12-hour winner, Matt Campbell, partnered with Earl Bamber, former Porsche Works driver.
I had a conversation at one point with Peter Mackay, who is kind of Mr. Porsche trivia himself. And apparently the Martini stripes came from a tie, as he told me. So that's where that sort of pattern emerged from some club of drivers or something of that nature. I can't remember the specifics, but it was kind of fascinating that this now iconic livery that we do see pop up all the time on all different types of cars comes from a tie with a suit jacket. But meanwhile, we watch BJ Fulton here, still sitting in third, about 1.3 seconds off of our leader, Dylan Scott. Chad Duncan just in front of him, looking within range, but he's going to have to get a little bit closer if he wants to try and overtake that number 83.
Yeah, and at the moment, Dylan Scott really punching a hole through the air at the moment. He's just set the fastest lap of the race. He's just on a 2-minute 4.240 and is keeping that 0.8 really on the ragged edge as they come out of coming out of Hell Corner. And there we can see that there is GT4 traffic inbound. I knew it was going to be within the first 10 minutes. I didn't expect it at the stroke of probably 6.5 minutes of this race, but that is going to be Adam Abrams just up ahead in the 704, who's rounding out the 4-strong field of the Porsche 718 Cayman GT4s. Very, I don't know whether to call that a patchwork quilt livery there for Adam Abrams, but good to see he's got the good old Porsche logo emblazoned on the side of both sides of his car, but he's a minute and 45 down. I mean, we're looking at the lap times here, Joe. Alan Watts doing a 2:17.8. That is 13.5 seconds slower than our race leader, Dylan Scott.
Indeed. And I don't think it's Abrams that's being caught. I think it is David Fabi that they're coming up to, if I'm looking at our tracker correctly. So, yeah, the 08. Yeah, and there he is right there, the 2 car. So he is just ahead of our leaders. That's because he had to come down to pit lane and take one of those spare cars due to an incident that we're unsure of what exactly happened. There is Chad Duncan, who has gained a lot this lap. Wasn't it over a second up to Scott? It's now down to half a second.
Well, you can really close in coming out of Forest Elbow, but if Dylan's had a little bit of a drama as they go through the chase here at turns 20 to 22, it's a 23 corner circuit here at Mount Panorama. So Dylan Scott has now got to be very, very careful because he's got to get through on David Fabi rather quickly, expedite that move to get himself out of harm's way. But Chad Duncan is absolutely charging and sets the new fastest lap of the race, 2-minute 3.251. And at the best part of it was nearly half a second quicker than Dylan Scott, as this is the moment that's going to be very, very crucial. Fabi ahead of Scott. Could this be the opportunity that Chad Duncan needs to slingshot his way through into the race lead as they head into Griffin's Bend once again here at turn 2? It's going to be a tall order, but you know what? It's got to be the case that Dylan Scott has got to pull the trigger at the right time and not make an absolute pig's ear of it.
I think you're right that Dylan must have had some sort of mistake somewhere along the mountain here to lose that time. And wow, they're let by David, who did a very good job considering how tough it is to try and let lapping traffic through on there, and timed it just about right. I'm sure it was still scary, and again causes a headache for BJ Fulton through McPhillamy.
That was so close. That could have gone so horribly wrong for David and for BJ at that point. But David, as you rightly said there, Joe, did exactly the right thing. And now Dylan has got that lead back up to 1.2 seconds, but David is having to keep out of trouble. Alan Watts now in the pit lane as Jim Garamani takes the race lead in the 163. Looks like there's a little bit of front end damage to the 225.
That hood is wobbling about here, so yeah, he must have hit something and has brought it down to a halt. Now, and he's missed his pit stall. He's having to back up into it. I was going to say, I usually it's instantaneous if you find yourself... and it was through the skyline into the dipper.
So it's all about getting it right, and Alan has just, I think, carried a bit too much momentum through, and it was coming through the dipper that he actually tangled with the wall, and that has now put him all the way down into third place. It's put him about 1 minute and 10 ahead of Adam Abrams, who we saw had the damaged right front steering in the early throws of this race. But now, because of Dylan Scott getting past David Farby rather quickly, and so did Jad Duncan, you can see that Jad is able to put the car a little bit more on the racing line, whereas Dylan's flirting with the walls a little bit too much. But Jad goes wide into Reed and Sulman, and that has allowed Dylan to get away, and the gap has now gone back up from what was 8 tenths by 6.5 tenths to nearly 1.5 seconds. So it's a pendulum swing between the two overall race leaders, as Dylan Scott tries to now, at the 28.5 minute mark, to move away from Jad Duncan.
Checking in on Dustin Heindel, who's just outside of the podium right now, coming down through the S's himself and into the dipper. Looks like he's able to navigate that successfully. He's, let's see, looks like maybe about 2 seconds or so behind BJ Fulton, so not outrageously far away. I have a big question mark, though, Alex, for Alan Watts, because when he pitted, we still have 3/4 of the race to go. Now, they have been able to go for quite some time, but I don't think they've been go down to sub 10 minutes left in the race at previous tracks, and I'm pretty sure this is a thirsty circuit.
Yeah, as I said earlier on, when we just after we had the GSRC track guide, Joe, that half of this circuit, which measures just over 3.86 miles, half of it is power, and you are on that throttle, you are flat chat, foot to the floor, and you have to use the maximum horsepower potential of these cars and just wring the neck of them right up the rev range. And you know, when you're seeing these 992 GT3Rs going at over 165 miles an hour down Conrod Straight into the chase, and they're nearly topping out of that kind of speed here. We're seeing with Rob Russell 135 miles an hour up the mountain straight down, and you've got another compression zone here, so they're hitting nearly 150 going into Griffin's Bend. It's now going to be down to around about second or third gear to keep the traction. But now Rob Russell is starting to catch Dustin Heindel. The gap between them is 2 seconds as Rob makes his way through the cutting. You've got to be very much millimeter perfect at this part of the circuit, because as I said, the walls are so close. There is no runoff area, there is nowhere to hide. Rob nearly catches the right hand side wall going through Reed Park, now into Sulman, and then it's going to be down this iconic compression zone at 138 miles an hour in 5th gear. And then you're going to be on the brakes, down the gearbox as you go downhill, 2nd gear, 70 miles an hour. And you're going just at around about highway speeds here at the moment. And then it's up through 3rd, into 4th. It's going to be back down to 2nd here at Forest Elbow, 60 miles an hour. Now accelerate and apply the power up to 3rd, 100 miles an hour and climbing. And this is where the speed really starts to build here at the Conrod Straight, Joe. I mean, you're seeing here that flat six boxer engine is absolutely screaming at the moment. It's 6th gear, full throttle, 160 miles an hour. Now brace yourself into the chase. And it's going to be hard on the brakes, down from 6th all the way down to 2nd at 80 miles an hour. And then you can start accelerating out of turn 21 and 22. And you're going to be at about 120 miles an hour, 130 at 5th gear. Dab on the brakes, down to 2nd, 70 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour. Don't go too wide coming out of Murray's, as we saw with Jeffrey Shulham do that with a lack of a rear wing and ending up spinning the car around. But this is a great onboard perspective on how hard our drivers in the GT3 class are pushing.
And that looked terrifying through there, which is crazy because it's those GT3 class cars that they use for the Bathurst 1000. So it's that's about what they tend to see even in the real world, trying to race around this place. Jim Garamani, your leader, but Larry Haas is right up behind him, and they've got the overall leader now trying to pass. This could act as a compromise. Larry Haas could get an opportunity, but Jim times it just right. He is through, but now they've got the rest of the GT3 field that's going to try and overtake them.
Yeah, here comes Jad Duncan in the 83. He's right on the rear of Jim Garamani. That is hard in the mouth moment stuff there, but Jim times that rightly, lets Jad through, does not want to impede him. And now BJ Fulton's got to get through. He won't get through here at the S's and going into the dipper, but BJ decides to fire it around the outside on the approach into Forest Elbow. Good negotiation there by the 82 as we got Rob Russell closing in on Dustin Heindel. The gap was 2 seconds. It's 3.5 tenths. So Rob now coming out of Forest Elbow is going to have the slipstream, and he's going to get a bit of a tow from Larry Haas, and now the gap is going to stay at about 3.5, 4 tenths of a second as they go down Conrod Straight, side by side. GT3 next to GT4 into the chase. This could be drama here, possibly at the chase for these two drivers in 4th and 5th, but they managed to get past GT4 leader Jim Garamani.
Still holds that lead as well over Larry Haas, so they weren't able to use the traffic to try and affect that pass. Meanwhile, Rob Russell here on the back of Dustin Heindel. Once again, Dustin going slightly defensive, coming into Hell Corner. He does need to focus on the exit, though. It's much longer here. Up Mountain Straight, and he knows it. He is trying to break that slipstream as he comes across the track. Still, Rob Russell, just tied to that rear bumper, is making sure that Dustin cannot make any mistake.
This in turn, Joe, is allowing BJ Fulton to have a secure hold on that 3rd spot at the moment. And whilst these two are battling away, BJ's going to start to scarper away into the distance, and he's 2.6 seconds up the road from Dustin. Meantime, Larry Haas is still within striking distance of Jim Garamani. Great battle here, and a little bit of a wider sweep into the cutting by the 163. Now through into Quarry Corner, into Reed Park. This is great because we've got some good battles. I mean, Rob Russell really getting on with the business at hand because Dustin Heindel has got pressure and he's made a mistake going through into Skyline. Russell all over the rear wing of the 117 as they go through the S's, and now this is going to be the opportunity for Russell to get through on Heindel coming out of Forest Elbow. He's 3.5 tenths of a second behind, but that gap was less than 2 tenths, and now we're going to see a flat-out drag race. Oh, clip of the wall by the right rear of Rob Russell, and he's lost time.
He was leaving nothing on the table. Unfortunately, he bit off a little bit too much on that last exit. Dustin Heindel able to breathe a sigh of relief after that one because Rob, like you said, was just layering the pressure on all across the mountain. And I thought for sure he'd have a good opportunity here with how close he was chasing along there. He's already recovered somewhat down through the chase and up into the final corner. Both of them are going to elect to stay out, even though we're just about hitting that halfway mark. Off across the line, and a slip up from Rob Russell. He's the latest to get bit by Murray's Corner, and he is going to whack the Armco.
And he's also got no rear wing to speak of either, so a nearly 4-mile trip for the number 9, and I think there's a little bit of crabbing. Yeah, look at the steering. It's left hand down here a little bit, Joe. So Rob Russell, oh, he's lost it into Hell Corner. That's going to be a big, big drama. Rob Russell, I think it all started when he tagged that right rear, and that might have broken the rear axle ever so slightly and caught the car crabbing.
He's had to take a tow. He doesn't feel safe trying to drive it around. And that will be costly because for those not familiar, iRacing essentially kind of calculates how long that tow would take, bringing you around the entirety of the track. So it is going to be a long, long time, probably a good 5 or 6 minutes that he'll have to wait before he'll be plopped into pit lane, take that spare car, and be able to get back out there. But now we watch the battle for the lead in the GT4s. Garamani with Larry Haas doing everything he can to try and squeak by and take what could be his first win, I think, ever in the series. I'll double check to see what my stats say, but I don't think we've ever seen Larry Haas on the top step. In the meantime, behind them, they got a GT3 car. Oh, and Haas is not going to stand on the top step today because he loses his up through the various parts at the top of the hill.
Yeah, they had Evan Gold in the 370 chasing them down like a rabid Wolverine. And unfortunately, Larry Haas now pulls that car to the right-hand side of the circuit on the gravel at McPhillamy. But that was a hard, hard hit for the 266. The right side absolutely destroyed.
He's trying his best to drag it back, and he's actually dragging a lot of gravel onto the circuit in the process. That's going to be a shock for whoever comes up there first behind him and may not find the grip that they are expecting. Haas doing everything he can to stay out of the way as well, and looks like he might also give it up and take the tow as he comes to a halt there. Meanwhile, checking back in with Jad Duncan. I got to give credit to Duncan here, Alex, because at first it looked like Dylan was going to run away from him in the early couple laps, but not only is Jad running back down, he's been just kind of staying put, watching, waiting, staying patient for an opportunity.
I completely agree there, Joe. I mean, you've also got to factor in, I did say about the closing rate of speed between the GT3 and the GT4 cars. Now, bearing in mind, Jim Garamani is 2 laps down at this point with 18.5 minutes to go until the checkered. So Dylan is the first one that's got to brave the elements, so to speak, as in getting past GT4 traffic in front of them. But Jad has kept Dylan very, very honest. And you can see how hard they are pushing. The best lap so far, I mean, Dylan just lost nearly a second out of his race lead. I mean, Jad did a mid 2:03.7. Dylan did a low 2:04.6. So
Wow.
Again, you can just see that some drivers, you know, they build up to battling for a race lead. Dylan just thought he'd scarper away. Jad went, no, I've got a different strategy. Let's get the tyres and the brakes up to temp and have all our 4 weapons around each corner of this car razor sharp. And that's exactly what we're seeing. And here they go into the chase here on what is now lap 12. And Jad is within striking distance. He's 3.5 tenths as they go through to the chase. A bit of a wobble there from Dylan Scott, trying to apply the power out of turn 21, and he nearly lost the back end.
Is Scott starting to feel it a little bit, maybe making a few mistakes here and there now as Jad Duncan continues to just show himself in the mirrors. Now, we have had a couple drivers take what I believe are scheduled stops. It looks like Rondeau and Shulam have both come on in. I'm imagining, at least for Shulam, he's taken a spare car in the meantime. But they are currently sitting 6th and 7th. Otherwise, Scott, Duncan, Fulton, Heindel, and Gold still owe us a pit stop, and we're coming down to the end of this stint soon. So we should see a flurry of cars entering pit lane, a little bit of a glance of the inside curve for the 08 as, again, Dylan Scott is just trying his best to shake Jad Duncan.
Jad's been a lot calmer with regards, you know, they do say, Joe, that smooth is fast, and that's exactly what I'm seeing in the driving style of Jad Duncan, whereas Dylan Scott is throwing a bit more caution to the wind and is taking a lot more curb to shorten the circuit as much as he can. And Dylan Scott is getting so close to that wall coming out of the right-hand side of Salmon Park, and he's started to open up a little bit of a gap, but Jad is just being that little bit smoother, a little bit more concise and consistent, and that's why his lap times have been quicker. Going through here at the S's and through the dipper, you could see that when Dylan Scott turned the car right, the back end was trying to step out to the left-hand side. And now we go through Forest Elbow here at turn number 18. And Jad, well, he mistimed his run coming out of Forest Elbow, and that has put the gap back up again. So in the twistier stuff, it seems like Jad Duncan has the advantage. But when it comes to straight-out speed, Dylan Scott has got his number.
Yeah, I kind of wondered for a moment if maybe he had brushed the wall, but as we hop off board the car, it doesn't look like there's any damage. So I get the sense that maybe he just had to lift a big amount to try and keep the car from hitting that concrete, and that cost him the time up here to Dylan Scott. Let's see what the lap times look like this time. Last time it was a 2:03.8 from Dylan, and it's another 2:03.8. So Dylan's getting back on the horse. Jad Duncan obviously a little bit slower because of his issue coming out of Forest Elbow. And now they've got yet more traffic in front of them as some of our cars, I think, taking more scheduled stops, trying to make out who that is that just emerged. That's Evan Gold, it looks like.
Yeah, in the 370, he's currently running in the 8th spot at the moment. Behind Michael Tercy, Jeffrey Shildon rounding out 6th, and then it's Mark Rondeau in 5th. Dustin Heindel rounding out the top 4, but now this is another moment with 14.5 minutes to go, and let's bear in mind our top 4 have yet to pit. So Evan Gold, round the outside goes Dylan Scott. I never would have thought I would have seen that move coming. And Dylan chanced it and thought, right, let's put a car between me and Jad and see what happens. And now Jad is stuck behind Evan Gold on one of the fastest, twistier parts of the circuit, through into Sulman Park and now into McPhillamy at 135 miles an hour. And a glance on the wall by Evan Gold. That was not what he needed, and his ping is not exactly helping him. And he nearly clips the wall again on the left-hand side, going through the S's, and Jad is really being compromised here.
He really is. I thought that maybe that 370 was going to pull off to the side yet again, like we'd seen before, and now he finally does. But honestly, that was perhaps the worst spot that he could have chosen, because the 83 also was held up, so much so that now BJ Fulton has become a problem for the number 83. He's going to get a little bit of a slipstream. Will Gold allow him through to keep this battle going between them? It doesn't look like it. He's holding to the racing line, and he'll act as a buffer between the pair of them. And apologies, I made that little bit of a noise earlier, as I think Gold has an issue coming off the corner. That might allow the spot through, and yeah, he's going to finally lift and let him by. But we saw Dylan Scott get close enough to the wall that there was a little puff of smoke coming out of Griffin's Bend. But Dylan Scott has decided now is as good of a time as any to take a pit stop now that he pulled a gap to Jad Duncan. This might be his best chance, since Duncan was not right on top of him, and he might not have to worry about the undercut.
The biggest thing is that with regards to the undercut, as you say, Joe, Jad Duncan has now got to make this in-lap absolutely millimetre perfect. He cannot give BJ Fulton an opportunity to fire it up the inside of him, especially if we go down into the chase. BJ Fulton is not that far behind him. Dylan Scott re-emerges and comes out in 4th, ahead of Mark Rondeau in the number 11 car. So Dylan now, I think, did the right thing. He got out of any kind of possible situation that might come his way, as they now come up to Jim Garamani. Jim gets out of the way of Jad as they go through Reed and Sulman, and then BJ also gets through. Gap between them is around about 6.5 tenths of a second through McPhillamy, and heading into Skyline, down into the S's, and it's got to be about keeping it away as best you can from the walls, but still using as much of the circuit as possible. So I would imagine that Jad and BJ will pit this time here on what will be lap 15, and that's going to give an opportunity to Dylan Scott. Also, Dustin Heindel in P3 still hasn't pitted yet. He's about 7 seconds away from this battle, and there he is in the back of shot. So we are getting towards the last 10 minutes of this race out of 40 here, Joe, and things are looking rather exciting in the last few minutes of the race here at Bathurst.
I'm trying to figure something out, though, because Garamani had a very good pit stop time at under 10 seconds, and in fact his pit lane was only 33 from cone to cone, as Jad Duncan, our temporary leader, is now in for his stop. The reason I bring this up is because Alan Watts, we saw him miss his pit stall. He was 47 seconds. That was a very long pit stop. And somehow he wound up ahead of Garamani. By all the numbers, it does not make sense. So either Jim had an issue out on track that we don't know about, or something fishy has been going on, because Alan Watts is being shown as our GT4 leader.
Well, just to put you in the picture here, Joe, Jim Garamani lost a big chunk of time in the opening sector. 51.7 for Alan Watts. It was a 1 minute 23.5 for Jim Garamani. So I think you're right. Jim hit trouble. Now, whether he's had any damage or he's had a spin out, and that can quite easily happen. I mean, going into the right-hander at Griffin's Bend, and at the moment there is Jim. He's 19.3 seconds behind Alan Watts at the moment in terms of the GT4 classification. So that opening sector, and this is Jim on his second lap of this stint. So whether Jim had problems in the pit lane as well.
But like I said, his pit lane time was good. It was only 33 seconds. So I think you might have caught on to something. He may have, like you said, had a spin and not hit anything. But if you get stuck facing the wrong way on the mountain section of this track, you have to wait for a big, long opening in traffic to try and, 10-point turn your way around and get back on the track, as our leaders are going to go side by side through the dipper, and they'll manage to get out the other side. Well, not our leaders, I guess, as Jim Garamani is now in second place. Regardless, point still stands that I can't believe both cars risked that and still got away with it.
That's the thing. That's what we've seen about Dylan Scott, how he will throw caution to the wind. He's done that plenty of times here at Mount Panorama. And the only thing is when... right, BJ Fulton now in pit road. So it is the race to see where the number 82 emerges. As we'll hear the klaxon sound for activity down in pit lane. Very distinct signal down here at Mount Panorama. BJ Fulton now pulls into his pit box. Now we'll take on board some fuel. Of course, now Dylan's going to retake the lead, but how far behind will BJ Fulton be? And then it's going to be the run to the checkered.
Jad Duncan was the one that was chasing him in second place, and he's already finished his pit stop. But unfortunately for Jad, he is still, looks like about 4 seconds back from him. And checking the pit stop times.
Look at this. BJ Fulton's come right out of the back end behind Dylan Scott. We've got a race for the lead on our hands with 8 minutes to go here, Joe. BJ Fulton timed that pit stop to perfection, and Dylan Scott thinks, what the heck? I've got someone chasing me down, and it's not Jad Duncan. BJ Fulton has now brought himself into the bona fide possibility of going for the W here at Mount Panorama. I think Dylan Scott got a bit surprised by that.
I would be too. This is bizarre, honestly. Although some of it is explained by the pit stop of BJ Fulton, who is a second and a half quicker than Dylan Scott. And the reason I noticed is because I was just looking at Jad Duncan's, who was much slower, 3 seconds slower than BJ Fulton. So that's why we see the 83 or 3 seconds slower than Dylan Scott. So that's why Jad Duncan came out so far behind. The pit stops really undid any good work he had in this race. In the meantime, the reverse is true for BJ Fulton, who has gone from third to second and is now a bit of a surprise contender for the win.
Yeah, and now they've got some traffic coming up in front of them as well, and they're going to be catching them very, very quickly as they're heading over 160 plus miles an hour, heading to the chase here on what is lap number 17 of the race, with 6.5 minutes still to go until the checkered. So giving the fact that that's probably going to give us another 4 laps of racing here, Joe, not including this one. So we'll probably hit a total of 20, maybe 21 laps by the checkered. But BJ Fulton deep on the brakes going into Murray's corner. Both of them using around about the same amount of curbing, and it's 6.5 tenths between Dylan Scott and BJ Fulton. Now what BJ needs to do is be a little bit braver on the brakes, use Dylan Scott as a yardstick, as we've got one of the other GT3s coming out of the pit lane, having served another pit stop. A couple of drivers have had to use at least one spare car tonight, But Dylan Scott, again, is just really showcasing the track knowledge advantage. And that is going to be, I think, is that Alan Watts?
That is. Indeed, Watts trying to stay out of the way, seeing this is a battle for the race win. And he does manage to make himself small enough through one of the trickier parts there through Griffin's Bend to allow them through. Worth noting, I think Jad Duncan has caught up in that as well. So we might have a 3-car fight for the win in the GT3s at this stage. Although as soon as I said that, I realized that's Duncan that we saw on screen. He got held up, so he had caught up, and it all kind of withered away from him as soon as he caught that leader in the GT4s. Watts still leading Garamani by 27 seconds, so he can afford to give up that time.
Yeah, but in the meantime, looking at the lap times, or looking at the opening sector, Dylan Scott, 46.6, BJ Fulton, 47.3, Jad Duncan, 46.9, and now they've broken the timing beam for sector 2, and it's BJ Fulton that's the quickest of the trio in that mid part of the track. Jad Duncan, as you said, lost a lot of time, and that is now cost him probably the best part of well over 1.2 seconds. He did a 29.9. BJ Fulton, a high 28.6, a high 28.7 for Dylan Scott. But now, 4 minutes and 20 to go, the gap between Dylan Scott and BJ Fulton, it's expanded to the point of around about 1.3 seconds. So we now go on to lap 19 of this race, so I would imagine we're probably going to be on the cusp. We might cross the line with a couple of seconds to spare, so it looks like we could be going for 21 laps of Mount Panorama, but Dylan Scott is trying to just keep that gap at around about between 1 and 1.3 seconds. Can BJ Fulton do something magical in these next 2, maybe 3 laps to close on into our race leader?
Hope they put enough fuel in to get it to the finish then. You can't exactly eke out an extra lap around here unless you've been trying for the entire race. Dylan Scott has dealt with some pressure, first from Jad Duncan, now from BJ Fulton, but he's been slicing through the traffic more effectively. His woes are not over as they finally get a little bit of sunshine in what has been a mostly overcast race here today. 3 minutes left to go. Like you said, it is going to be tight. And oh my goodness, he catches the 704 in a very bad spot. And they try to take their racing line. You can't blame Adam Abrams on that one. I mean, in that situation, you kind of have to stick to your racing line. You don't want to be unpredictable, but he is causing a severe headache for all the drivers in the top spots.
And that nearly put, well, that 7 gold, I think, just behind Adam Abrams at the moment. There's the 83 of Jad Duncan. And that gap between him and BJ Fulton has dropped to just under 2 seconds. But BJ Fulton, at that point when we saw Dylan Scott catch Adam Abrams, that could be so different. If those two had come to contact, it would have been game over, and multiple bits of carbon fibre would have been spread all over the width of the circuit. As Jad Duncan quickly gets his way through, now that's going to give him an open run down into Murray's Corner to catch up with BJ Fulton, but it is going to be 2 laps remaining as Alan Watts still holds on to the race lead in the 718 category.
And by a full 31 seconds too. So yeah, Alan Watts is sitting pretty at this stage. In the meantime, Dylan Scott breathing another sigh of relief that he gets himself a little bit of room between himself and P2. Fulton's going to be pushing, though, to try to close that back down. He might have enough time to do so, although I look at that gap. Oh, excuse me. Okay, I was going to say there was a connection issue for Fulton. He must have disappeared just as we turned the cameras, because there he is now in that Martini liveried machine. We'll keep an eye on the sector times, but Dylan Scott is going to be praying and hoping that there is no more traffic for a while. The next one up for him, it looks like, is the 370 machine.
Yeah, but you can see now that BJ Fulton is closing that gap on Dylan Scott. It's now down to a 1.5 seconds. So BJ Fulton has got a clear road between him and the man who is leading the race as we come into the final 60 seconds of the adventure here at Mount Panorama. So BJ Fulton, well, it's now or never to try and go after the 0.08 of Dylan Scott. And of course, that pit stop, he was the last one to pit. He's only been on these on this fuel bracket for what is now his 4th lap, as they will go down the Conrod Straight for what is going to be the, I'm sure it's going to be the penultimate time. We are going to be, I think, probably a couple of seconds to go before they cross the line, and then we'll go on to the white flag lap. So BJ Fulton has probably the best part of just over 5 miles to try and catch and pass Dylan Scott, but that's not going to be easy here.
And he caught him a bunch down that straightaway. In fact, it's down to 9/10 of a second. Is Dylan Scott trying to run out the time, or is he low on fuel? Because he was a full 2 seconds and some change ahead of him. I'm not sure what is going on, but it is not looking good for the 08, as he will cross the line to take the white flag. 1 to go. He is going to have to hold him back, and it's getting ever closer.
I think maybe he's had a couple of slowdown penalties, possibly. That would explain the gap going down. If he's had a couple of off-track excursions, you know, the track limits can be quite severe here at Mount Panorama. But here we ride on board with the 82 of BJ Fulton. That gap is now down to less than 5.5 of a second into turn 2 at Griffin's Bend, as we ride on board with the Martini to read number 82 car. You can see that Dylan Scott took a bit too much curb, and I think you might be right. Scott might be marginal on fuel here, and BJ Fulton's strategy of going, maybe he went a couple of laps longer, let's not forget. Dylan Scott, he might have just decided, okay, well, I'm going to give myself enough of a buffer, but maybe with this power-hungry, fuel-hungry circuit here, Joe, I think you might be right, because that gap going through into McPhillamy is 4.5. I think BJ Fulton's possible opportunity is going to be coming out of Forest Elbow down into the chase.
It'll all depend on how much Scott has, if this is a fuel issue. And we always have to remember that they start with the same amount of fuel, so just going later, all it does is not necessarily save you fuel, but you can be more accurate as to how much you need to the finish. And that may have been what has given BJ Fulton a little bit of an edge here. Dylan Scott has 0.4 of a second. Make that 0.3 of a second. He's being run down, and now they've got lap traffic in front of him. They come down to the braking zone. He covers down to the inside. BJ Fulton's going to try and look to the inside of Dylan Scott, the leader, but he's not able to get through. Dylan Scott holds on to the top spot, and he's got one more corner to go to try and get a home victory here at Bathurst. Mount Panorama, the mountain has smiled on the Aussie, as Dylan Scott is your winner.
Talk about heart in the mouth stuff there, Joe. BJ Fulton was just under half a second behind him after 21 laps. Jad Duncan rounds out the top 3. Good solid result here for the 117 of Dustin Heindel.
Something's happened to Watts. Wasn't he leading? Garamani's our leader now.
Oh my goodness, maybe Alan Watts has hit the barriers. Jim Garamani is going to pick up. I think. Let's have a look at the replay.
Yeah, he's hit something.
Oh, he's hit the wall, and that car is grabbing. And you can see the right front. The right front is not wanting to go anywhere. Oh, what a shame for Alan Watts. But Jim Garamani, I'm sure, is going to be absolutely beside himself. Oh! Can't
believe his luck. It was down into the dipper. Oh, and he gets in the way of, I think, Rondeau. In the process, who's probably not going to be appreciative of that, but Jim Garamani, who perhaps thought that for a brief while, his hopes of taking his first win had gone out the window. Instead, once again, the mountain, they say, sometimes chooses its winner. Today, it seems to have chosen the number 163.
Yeah. I mean, Jim Garamani, he'll be smiling all the way to the bank for this one. But yeah, I mean, that's a real shame. Alan Watts having that big moment through the S's, and the car literally got turned 180. The right front hit the wall hard and spat the car around the wrong way. But yeah, Jim Garamani is going to come out of Murray's corner, and he's going to take the win in the GT4. Well done to the 163. He weathered the storm here at the mountain and gets the victory here in the GT4 class. Great job by Jim to keep himself out of harm's way.
Fantastic job. Watts will still be scored in second as he was well ahead of Abrams. Adam Abrams potentially getting his first podium. Nope, looks like he had a second place a little bit earlier this season. So this will be his second podium as Evan Gold will bring home in 8th place. All right, so our results at the end of it sees Dylan Scott get himself a 3rd victory in a row. And BJ Fulton, who did try and make him fight for it, gets himself his 3rd second place, not in a row, but of this season. Jad Duncan will round out your podium as Dustin Heindel finishing 4th with Mark Rondeau in P5. Jeffrey Shulam was 6th and Rob Russell P7. As we mentioned, Gold was 8th, Terzi 9th, and Fabi was the last of your GT3s. I'll just round us out here with the GT4s as it was Jim Garamani taking the win. Alan Watts was 2nd and Adam Abrams running out the podium. Larry Haas, unfortunately, winding up a DNF today. And I think we're going to be having a very happy Dylan Scott with us here after that win, as he led just about every lap of this one, except for during the pit stops. Dylan, was there any inside info at this Australian track that helped you to the win today?
Well, I can't tell you that, right? As the only Aussie on the grid, I can't tell you that they weren't rooting for me and throwing out kangaroos and wombats at the wrong time for everyone else to run into. But
I was wondering, Dylan, if there might have been an echidna on the circuit at one point,
Yeah, well, we got the wildlife. I mean, the kangaroo would have been funny in iRacing, but we didn't get it. So, fortunately, just a boring old race without any kangaroos, without any indigenous wildlife.
So here's the big question on our minds, though. We noticed that those last 2 laps, you were giving away a lot of time. Was it tight on fuel?
No, it wasn't tight on fuel. So, I qualified on lower downforce, I think like everyone else did, but I chose to race on higher downforce just in case it rained, just to get up over the hill safely. And I think it started to hurt me. And then I was messing with brake bias at the end there, and I think I went the wrong direction because I don't really know what I'm doing, to be honest, which might sound stupid. I'm winning races, but to be fair, I don't know what I'm doing with setup and brake bias. But yeah, I mean, let's call it what it was. Masterclass from BJ. I mean, hanging back, saving fuel, jumping Chad on the pit stop, closing in on me on that last lap. I mean, what the heck? That guy's got a lot of laps. He was fast, but yeah, hat off to BJ, I got to say.
He did a spectacular job. And like you said, home win here. Is this one extra special for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's, it doesn't mean anything. It's iRacing. It's not the real thing. But, being my home race, I really wanted to win it. I thought I'd be pretty good, except, I ran with BJ the other night and realized how damn fast he was. So, it made me go to the drawing board and try different setups because I was on full downforce originally when I ran with him. So, I cut back the downforce a little bit, but went a little bit more than qualifying. I don't know if I could have survived on the qualifying downforce for the whole race. BJ's got a bit more talent than I do in that respect. So, and then Jad, of course, Jad's there, not messing around either. Like both of them. I'm going to start a list now because I asked you guys to tell, Bolton to slow down, but now you got to tell BJ and Jad to slow down too. So I'll Venmo you later.
Bold of you to assume that drivers would listen to anything we said.
You could try. You can only try, right? It's worth a shot.
Without a doubt. Again, a huge congratulations and a well-run race, sir.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you to GSRC, POC, and my kids, Nico, Luca, Aurora. Love you guys. Thank you.
So sadly, it looks like we won't get to chat with BJ Fulton, and haven't seen Jim show up in our booth. So we're going to close this one out with another thank you to our sponsors, Porsche. There is no substitute. Find out more at Porsche.com. And Top Gun MG, helping financial advisors be the best of the best. Contact them at TopGunMG.com. Thanks to the team today, Alex, Christian, and Dougie. Make sure and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a moment here on GSRC. Next race, once again, we're going to be switching hemispheres. It is off to Interlagos, Monday, October 6th, for the next round at 10 p.m. Eastern. Up next, though, on the channel itself, we return to the Skip Barber Sim series at the Nordschleife. That'll be fun. Be sure to check out the other broadcasts that we have listed here coming up over the course of the next week. And until next time, race clean, race hard. We'll see you on the track.
Sim